and welcome to a brand new episode of the Nitro RX podcast. I am one of your hosts, Thiemo and Nabila, and I am joined, as always, by my brilliant co-host, Nabila. How are you?
I am doing well. How about yourself?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. And I'm just really looking forward to getting stuck into the latest round of Nitro RX because it just seemed insane. It just keeps building and building each round. The gap jump was absolutely awesome this time around and really helped with the groupie racing. And the whole thing, regardless of the gap jump, was there not really put all the drivers to the test for me. So I really want to get your thoughts on this.
I think it was a really solid weekend. There was a lot of fans there as always, but I feel like the atmosphere increases every single round you go to. Like you can just see that kind of build up of each time, and definitely bringing it back to its home base of the US seems to be what it's good for. Do you know what I mean? It was very fun-thrilled, dramatic, and there was some different people in the final, which we haven't seen yet. So I think it was a pretty solid weekend all around, and I'm excited to get stuck in.
I think we sound really wise as well back in our Live and Hill review about this is a perfect way to start a season. It's going to build from here, and it's really paying off for us. So I'm very on board with that.
Absolutely. I think we only have more excitement to come, and it's nice that it kind of extends into next year. It feels like a really long season. We do have a couple of really close together, like we've had Minnesota, then we've had LA, and then we're going straight into Phoenix in a couple of weeks. And I think that consistency now is really building that atmosphere. So hopefully
it makes more sense as well because they're all in the same country. So it's nice that the Americans can just get all of their fix in it in like not less than a month, but just over a month's time, and whereas everything else has been a bit more spread out. But it makes sense because you need to transport it further because of country to country. So I like that they're like, we're going to maximize this, we're going to do it all in like October, November, and you're going to have a great time with it.
Absolutely. And the weather is obviously still really good out here, and everyone's just loving it. And there's just been some interesting things, and you see a ton of people going there having fun and having a laugh, and Travis has really made it that kind of championship that has brought the people in. Like he's done it for the fans, he's not done it for the drivers. I mean, obviously the drivers are still having an epic time and the cars are incredible and the jumps are ridiculous, but it's very, very fan oriented, and they've thought about that in every single thing they've done.
Yeah, and one of the things just before we get into the notable talking points is that I think when we were reviewing Minnesota, I was saying about the championship, I'd like to know what the standings were for that because I had to go back and find it. It was at the very end of the broadcast. And this time around, in between rounds, you had them interviewing drivers, and they had a little table up next to it, like, oh, this is the NRX standings for so far up until this point of the weekend, and the same for the Can-Am cross cars, and the same for Group E. Like, oh, okay, maybe they're listening to the podcast, and like, okay, take note of that, add that in, make them happy, tick. So they may get a tick from me on that one. So I appreciate these little extra bits that they don't take much effort to do, but just shows they're constantly looking for things to make it better.
Absolutely. And I think they've done that like every round there. They're looking to see what they can do. I don't know, it'd be awesome if they are listening to this. We're just going to go with absolutely, they take all their tips from us. Like, let's be real. But yeah, I think we should just now get into talking about this weekend. I mean, let's start off with the main one, Fraser.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, your driver of the weekend. I think you couldn't be singing his praises any louder, I feel like. So I'll let you take over straight away with him.
Yeah, I mean, he's really come into his own this weekend, converting all of the work into his first win of the season, and that's just incredible. Like, and he's also was doing the supercar category, so he's been jumping between two cars, and now he's built all the way up. Like, he's had podiums, and now to stand on the top step, I mean, just from the offset of that final, he was on it. He was like, nope, Larson isn't having this, it is mine. I mean, at the end you're a bit like, oh, is he going to hold it? Like, one of them came over the gap jump and one of them came around the side, and you were like,
but that's what we want.
No, I'm a bit worried. Yeah. But then he held it. And do you know what? I think it's really, really well deserved. He's put a lot of work into it. And it's just nice to see that the consistency tactic from Larson is still there, and he's just improving himself every weekend.
And on the Saturday as well, he nabbed the top qualifier position just to solidify that consistency, like you were saying there. So it's really nice to see that you can measure that progress from what is this, round 5 now, 4 or 5, and it's a short space of time, but over a long period, if that makes sense, because of the gaps. but it's nice that those gaps aren't impacting him in a negative way. You see that in other racing series where there's big gaps between races and the momentum falls off a bit maybe, but with him, he's on it, and it's great to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm intrigued to see what else he can do. I mean, he's making the championship interesting. Like, he's had a win, he's had a couple of podiums. Now also Larsson's had a win and a couple of podiums. Has he had 2
Travis
wins,
as well?
Larsson? No, we had a different winner almost every round, haven't we?
So we had Travis last time out. We've had Robin.
Yeah,
I think
we had Baccarat,
which means we've only got one Baccarat. Then we've had different every time. Then
yeah, it's super exciting, isn't it? Like, that's
this is F1 2012 kind of vibes. I'm loving it.
Yes, I mean, I just hope that we continue to get that, because they've got to be close in standings now. Fraser and oh my
Robin.
God, it's just slipped my mind. Robin, yeah. Sorry, I just had a blank moment in my brain there. But yeah, I think it's really exciting. But I'm intrigued because it's now hotting up to be a title that I cannot predict. In the beginning, I was like, okay, Larsson's won the first one. He's been super, super consistent, podium every single time. I mean, he did have a podium this time too. He came second.
But that's the thing, though. You can have different winners, but if you've still got the same kind of people on or around the podium, there's that consistency of impact of it as well then, and you still don't know. You can't predict, like, just winning isn't enough. You still need to be there if you're not winning, you need to be second or you need to be third.
Exactly. And I think that's going to play a huge part into it. Like, Travis did so well that last round, but what was he doing this weekend?
I had a great time with Travis this weekend watching him, and it just shows why Nitro is so great as well at the same time, because he had an absolutely stonking time in Minnesota, and then it's just a complete flip of that in LA. So it was just it's just madness. I mean, Carl was just a bit of a muddle on Saturday, and then he crashed out twice in the same corner, which I don't know quite how he managed to do it so consistently there, and then just didn't seem to be quite on it for Group E. We'll get to the Can-Am SXX later, because he seemed to do much better there, but in Group E, just nowhere. But the most fun I had, to be honest, was when he was trying to get to the last chance qualifier after smashing up the car, whichever number time this was, and you could see the start kind of just about happening, and then in the background you see this car racing around to try and get to the start. But he got there too late, because as he was talking with Coley later on, it's like the regulations say you've got to be there 5 minutes before the race starts. So I had to I started the race, but then pulled immediately off into the lane that they used to get back to the paddock. And I just found it hilarious that his reasoning for that was, if we'd known what the regulations were, then it would have been fine. Like, dude, it's your championship. How do you not know your own regulations? And it just, I love that as well, though. And I just think, yeah, we want to make this, if we want to make this legitimate championship, I've got to follow the rules. And he's kind of like, I'm bound by my own rules. And that's my own hampering that has caused this all this weekend. And it just kind of summed everything up perfectly, I felt.
Yeah, and I think he did an interview where I think he switched his car off in the middle of one of in the heats. He said, I went for the handbrake and I think I hit the power button. And I'm like, are they that close together? Like, that seems a little bit of a weird kind of...
Yeah, I don't know what the reasoning for that one is. I missed that at the time. But...
No, I just caught something. This was on social media after, like, just out of the fact, and I saw a little interview, and he's like, yeah, I kind of went for the handbrake and I hit the power button. And I'm like, oh, so he is only human. But I'm still like, that's just a random thing to do. Like, what a weird mix, handbrake, power button. I feel like they aren't usually sat next to each other.
They shouldn't be.
Maybe it's different. I don't know. I don't know what the inside of these cars are like. So who knows? But definitely an interesting weekend for him. One I think he'll wish to put behind him and just get on to the next one.
Yeah, I think as well, it's the saving grace of it is that there is such a good atmosphere at these races, though. So even if you are having a bit of a tough time, he can still enjoy himself. And at the very least, while it's not making the driver side of him happy, it's making the businessman side of him happy, because he's seeing that this is good for the sport and the championship, like we were saying. And as we mentioned at the top, Fraser obviously won, Larson in second, and then Baccarat in third as well. Another consistent performance for Baccarat there. So again, nice to see that switch on the podium. And also, there were plenty of people in that final, and they were all improving. So whilst they weren't on the podium itself, it was nice to see that that move forward, and we'll touch a bit more on that later. But Travis did do better in the Can-Am category. Thank God for some kind of salvation situation for him there. He won in the final for this one, and he had a much better weekend overall there. So that was great to see, and just kind of amusing that he wasn't able to transfer that from the Can-Am to the Group E.
Yeah, I think it's funny. Like, he's just like, do you know what? I just want to go have some fun. I'm going to go get myself in a Can-Am. It's like such a random kind of thing to do. Like, I'm in the Group E. I just had a shocking weekend, so I'll just go get myself in a Can-Am and win that. But it's really interesting because there's so much competition in that Can-Am field already. And I think, does he take away then from the people in it if he's driving in it too? Because he's just got that experience level that's a lot higher than the rest of the drivers? Or is it just all
ask
fun
me
and
again
games and we
after
enjoy
Phoenix,
it?
and we see if he has a terrible weekend in Can-Am, but then does really well in Group E, and maybe it's a switch thing. It's just a case-by-case basis, because you'd think that you could have made the same argument last time out in Minnesota for the Group E category for him. It's like, oh, is it just the experience there? But maybe not. I guess we'll find out. It's something we can analyze a lot more once the season is fully over in March or whatever it is.
Yeah, but no, it was really cool. Lia Block made her debut and had a video game style crash, but
Yeah.
I hope she is back safely in Phoenix.
Yeah, it was a very bizarre one. She kind of clipped Laticia slightly and then got it up, and I don't know if you saw how it kind of a slowed down version of the crash, but there was a tiny little block just in the way, and the car just was already on its side, and then you'd expect it to kind of go through it maybe, and it just hit it and just stayed put. And I was like, oh, okay. It just seemed very much like the developers haven't got to that point of the video game yet where they've made this a bit more real worldly, and it was just solid as anything, and it was just a really slow and bizarre crash. She was totally fine, but it was like, well, if that's how you're going to crash, then fair enough. But it was a damn shame because you couldn't get it back into it for that bit of the race then. But she was proving herself to be pretty decent, and Ken's obviously teaching her everything she needs to know there. So he was a bit cagey about if she's going to be back for Phoenix, but I hope we get to see her.
I mean, she's done some rallying. It's not like she doesn't have the experience. She comes from a stunt, her dad's a stunt driver, let's be real, and rally driver. She's not going to have not learned some tips and tricks. And even her mum's out rallying at the moment. So it's definitely something that's just running in that family. But she also does, I think, another few sports as well, which is exciting to see how much she's doing as such a young girl. So there was one other crash I did see, bringing back to it and looping back round, that they literally drove around the corner and the car just kind of picked itself up. It was a Can-Am, and it just went up and up and up and ended up like this, going across the track.
I think that was, who was that now? I'm thinking, it was something with, I'll insert name there later, but I know exactly which one you mean. And you looked at it and you thought someone must have made contact, and just didn't, and he just flipped all by himself. I think he might have, there was a bit of the track that was slightly raised because the dirty might have just hit that the wrong way, I think, but if it wasn't that, it was very bizarre and just took himself completely out of the race there, and it was just kind of, it was already dramatic enough up to that point with how close it was. Just like, oh, okay, you're just going to yeet yourself off out of this race then. But
yeah, it was definitely bizarre. But no, we had some familiar faces.
Deegan.
Yes, Deegan. I was like, it was such a random crash, and I'm like, well, I hope he's all right, because that's quite an intense little moment.
It looked pretty bad, but it was quite amusing because then obviously they red flagged it, and he rushed up to the commentary box as soon as he was told that he couldn't race in it again. So like, I'm out for a commentator. What's the rest of it? I was like, are you okay? Like, yeah, I'm fine. I was like, all right.
Yeah, but it was also nice to see some very familiar faces coming back. I mean, we said we wanted Laticia back, and you know what? She showed up, so that was fun.
Yeah,
she's made definite solid improvements.
I felt I had to really feel for her because the last race she was doing so well in that, and then she got rolled just before the end, and it was kind of a double. The first bit of the crash obviously didn't help because she then rolled, but then the second car that nudged into her helped flip her back onto four wheels again, so she could keep going and drag it over the finish line, which we weren't sure if she was going to be able to because that front right tyre was absolutely bent in. But she managed to drag it over, so she's still classified. And it was just such a shame because she'd managed such a brilliant overtake a little bit earlier on for only her second full race weekend. And I was thinking, yeah, potential is brilliant there. You're going on about Fraser, that's brilliant. Yeah, but look at this one, 2 races in, she's already going for it. So I hope that next time nothing gets in the way there so we can see what she's capable of. Because I don't know if she's going to stick with it past the American rounds or if this is just a testing thing. So I'm hoping we're going to see her in Phoenix at the very least so that she can capitalize on that, because that was just even just the dragging of the car over the finish line. That was just nice to see that determination there. And you could hear Coley over the commentary just urging her on to keep going and to make it there. So it was a shame it didn't pan out.
Yeah. And then I think that rounded out with obviously Travis winning, Gregoire in second, and Ben in third. So I think it was a solid weekend all around for that Can-Am category.
Yeah, very much so. And the last thing I want to say on that, in case you didn't see it, because it was not it was before the final. I'm trying to think if it was a semi-final or a last chance qualifier. Did you see Chucky with Ben's car?
No, I didn't. I missed that.
So as it was Halloween over the weekend, he decided that, so if you're sitting here in the car, which is only a visual for our non-Spotify listeners, then back at the other end of the car, sticking out halfway through the roof, was a Chucky doll, which he'd just inserted in there, and they just drove around. He was racing with him, sticking out then, just flying around at no man's business. And I just thought, yeah, you know immediately this is not an FIA sport, because they would not let that happen whatsoever. But it was hilarious just seeing around there. She's like, oh, who's that? Oh, it's Chucky. Oh, it's Ben. Okay, very easy to see whereabouts he is then. And I'm just amazed it stuck in place, to be honest. And I think in the final, they took it out, but I think I spotted it in the passenger seat of the car. So I like that it was still kind of there. It was just an amusing little thing and just very Nitro.
Yeah, I think they have such a good thing of bringing in that fun and dramatic element for the fans. And yeah, it just goes back to it. They're just really thinking about everything. And that's nice for a championship to be solidly focused, not only on really good racing, competitiveness, different categories, but also how important the people that show up to the event are. I mean, they're paying that money. They want good sport, but they also want a fun time. That's why they're there. And they're just doing that so nicely every time. And I think that brings us quite nicely into the NRX next category, since we're now on to the next topic.
Yeah, we'll touch on this a little bit, and just mainly overall, it was a solid weekend and nice to see them. And it was, because it's nice because I think we have at least now 3 categories over a race weekend. It changes maybe what those are. I mean, Group E is obviously the consistent one, but then NRX is seeming that B team, for lack of a better phrase there, but absolutely brilliant racing there as well. No gap jump for them, but didn't need it. To be perfectly honest, they still had a few little jumps that there are around the rest of the course. Still did a perfect job of that, and very close racing throughout. So we really didn't know what was going to happen there. But then the final race, Casper Janssen ended up winning that and kind of spoiling what was going to be a perfect record for George Megennis there, who was doing an absolutely phenomenal job all weekend then, with Jimmy Henderson in third. And yeah, like I said, it's just more close racing, and you just couldn't predict it really. So yeah, George was doing really well up until that point of the weekend. I mean, like we're saying, second is bad, but again, it's nice for us as fans, at least, probably less so for George, that it was someone else who won at the end and was able to put everything that I had learned over the course of the weekend. But I know exactly what you're going to try here, so let me just see if I can work around it. I can use all these tests, and as long as I can get there in the final, I can still win. And this is exactly what he did then.
Absolutely. And speaking of which, we are actually joined by George Megennis today. So we're excited to have you here today, George. How was your weekend?
It was fantastic, honestly. Start to finish, I was really killing it. And the team was doing a great job. The setup was fantastic. I won 5 out of the 6 races of the weekend. Unfortunately, the one that I didn't win was one of the finals, but still love P2. It's a fantastic result. But yeah, it was a great weekend. It was a lot of fun. The car was going well. It's probably my best weekend ever, honestly.
So it's pretty impressive. Like you were saying, overall, the 5 out of 6 is still not something to be shaking a stick at in terms of disappointment. So, I mean, it's probably easier for us to say on the outside of that. Was that kind of something where it was just one of those things? that Casper just managed to get the best of you in the end? Because I mean, it was the very last one that he got you on, but it took him a weekend.
So I was battling with Casper all weekend, and then in the final, he got a good start, and it was a decision I had to make between either shunt him into a wall and then probably get a penalty, or I let him be there and then I try and pass him the next corner. So I decided to do the next thing and not push him off fully on the start. And then going into turn 2, the first banked corner, I tried to go around the outside, and then the second I did, I realized, oh wait, he tried to do this to me and I hit him, so he's probably gonna hit me if I do this. So I just went straight for the Joker then.
So I'm loving the thought process there, considering you're dealing with everything else in the car and like, hang on a minute, what's he up to here? I've got to make it all in like a matter of seconds.
Yeah, it's funny, like after a certain number of laps in the car, you don't really actually think about what you're doing. It's all just very natural, and especially with rallycross and off-road racing, you can't really predict the surface level of grip, so you really have to feel it out as you're going through it. So it ends up being just all completely on instinct, and then you have a lot of time then to think about these things.
So I'm going to take it back, because you mentioned while we were chatting once that you had English class this morning. So I take it you are still in school, and I imagine you had a pretty busy day before you joined us. I hope the class went well. So I wanted to ask you, how are you finding the balance of school and racing? Do you think you'll end up making a full switch into racing full times? Sorry to your parents if I'm giving you any ideas right now, or do you think it's really important to continue your education in tandem with your racing?
No, so I've been fully homeschooled my entire life, from day one. I've never stepped foot into a school. So it works very well with the racing, where I can just kind of work whenever I can, whenever I want to, kind of thing. So I did actually have English class like 30 minutes before this, but it really helps with racing, and I'd love to go into racing full time, but I'm also really interested in baking as like a profession. So it's an interesting balance.
I'm seeing a rival for Street Bike Tommy's Barbecue coming here.
So I was walking around all weekend, and I think his entire job for that weekend was to tailgate professionally. It was the funniest thing ever, because every time I walked past him, he would be standing behind this truck, like doing some tailgating activity every minute of every single day.
That's crazy. And what a job. I wish I had that.
That's how we get into this.
Right. So I'm going to piggyback off of that baking, because I have noticed on your stories that you do a lot of baking in your spare time. So I want to now pick up on the part where you said you're thinking about it professionally, and also ask you, what's your favorite thing to bake, how you got started, and do you watch the Great British Bake Off?
Oh, those are some great questions. So if I can remember them all, I got started in baking beginning of 2021. I have no idea why. I just went downstairs to my mom one day and was like, hey, do you want to make a cake? And so we made this bad vanilla cake, and then I decided I wanted to put Kit Kats in it. And I just started doing it more and more. I do it like every day now. And it just spiraled from there. I'm also not bad at it now. Like, I make tasty things. Ask Andreas. He's had some cookies. Travis has had some cookies. Honestly, I think it was a batch of 50 cookies for all of Vermont Sports Car. So I do it a lot now.
So you've definitely got a backup crew if you need it there. You could be doing all the catering for Nitro RX at this rate.
Yeah, it was funny. I was talking to the Subaru guys. I was like, hey, so what did you think of the cookies? And they're like, oh, you made those, because they didn't know. Like, they were asking the team catering, like, what's the recipe for this? They had no idea I made them.
I kind of love that, bro. It's good to say that it's how you got into Nitro, kind of the same approach that you took to baking. You just came downstairs one day, like, you know what, I want to go racing in this category.
No, getting into Nitro was an ordeal. Because my brother has a full circuit racing background. He races for Lamborghini and IMSA. So my parents did that for like 5 years. Like, so we had a ton of connections. All of our sponsors knew it. Like, everything was in circuit racing. And then when I turned 14, I actually won a contest, and I was selected to drive the lights car.
Oh, nice.
Wow.
At you guys remember ARX in Mid Ohio?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I got to do that. First time ever driving a car. Like, I borrowed my brother's mom's my brother's mechanic's mom's Ford Fiesta and learned how to use a clutch the day before I got into this 330 horsepower race car. And I just fell in love with it. It was so much fun. The shifting was really fun. How much torque the car had, the acceleration was a lot of fun. And I just kept pursuing it from there.
So it spiraled quite nicely for you as well. Then, in, like you say, Nitro this year. Then, and aside from this weekend, because obviously pretty darn good weekend overall. How's the whole kind of season been from your perspective?
So just this season, average, okay. It would probably start with Rally X Nordic in Sweden. That was a great event for me. I was fastest all weekend. I actually beat both the Ericsson brothers in a car they designed and built in 2012. So that was a good feeling.
Extra level of satisfaction there.
I know, right? It was great. Like, they've been driving these for 10 years, and I jumped in 2021 and just sent it. Unfortunately, like, I made some mistakes. I hit a bollard. I don't know if you watched it in the final on Sunday, and that took me out of it. I actually stole that bollard. It's in my room now. So if you haven't seen it, I still have it. And then went straight to Lydden Hill from there. Lydden was a tough event for me. I guess I was still on the 2021 Nitro feeling. And in 2021 Nitro, it was very much to get by someone, you have to be quite aggressive because it's very difficult to pass. It felt a little bit like short course racing. So I guess there's still a little bit of that mindset because I was being a little bit too aggressive. I'm not gonna lie. So I had a couple incidents. Both finals, though, I think I would put the blame like 50-50 on what happened. I had that moment with Casper, I think it was on Saturday, where I was fully down the inside and then on Sunday, I don't even remember what happened. All I know is the car got destroyed twice in 2 days. Sweden was better. I really, really toned it back for that one. It was really important for the whole team to just put in some finishes. So I believe on the Saturday I was 5th. So it's just a very conservative weekend overall. And then
so get that banker experience in, and you can build it from there, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. And then on Sunday, I think I was 3rd. I think so. Yeah. And then Minnesota was good. It was pretty weird, honestly, not going to Finland because we'd like done all the travel, we'd done all the research, so we just kind of had to cancel it all and then go to Minnesota for the finale of the European Championship. So that was interesting, but I was honestly glad for it. I have a lot of experience in Minnesota, so it suited me very well. And I'm thinking about it now, and I don't have a clue where I finished.
It's all just too much of a whirlwind for you.
I don't remember. I know I think I finished 2nd twice.
I say a lot's happened for you since then, and you've had a whole weekend of racing since then. So
yeah, I got home at like 9-10 last night, and then I stayed up till 4. So I'm quite tired, but
I'm understanding why there's memory problems happening here.
Yeah. Minnesota was quite good, and then obviously Glen Helen was fantastic. So average this year it's been okay. Look, it's going much better now.
Oh, definitely. And in terms of the future, you think it's obviously stick with Nitro for this season. Is there anything else that you've got lined up that you can share, or is it all still very much cloak and dagger?
Well, I I'm just doing Nitro. I've got Phoenix, and then there's maybe some other stuff and with that Nitro is gonna do and bring the next class along with. But yeah, other than Phoenix, I'm just hanging out.
Well, so I think you stow away maybe with some of the other Nitro people, and you come along with some baked goods and talk your way into getting another seat in a different category, maybe that way, and get some more experience.
Yeah. Fingers crossed. Maybe if I'm nice enough to Vermont Sports Car, I'll get they'll bring a third car, but we'll see.
Worth a try, right?
I mean, yeah. You can also always end up, as Thiemo said earlier, in the catering team. Or so you want to touch a little bit more on that professional baker? Like, do you think you would actually give up racing?
To give it up, it's just like I'm sure I could do them both.
Right.
I really want to go to culinary school. I've done like a lot of classes, and then I did like a week-long intensive. I finished third in a competition for cakes. That was good. But I've done racing for what, 13 years now, so I really love it, and I'm really passionate about it, and I can't imagine living without it at this point.
I mean, baking and racing, what is more to enjoy than that? It's quite funny because my pastime when I wasn't racing was also baking. So I feel like I could talk to you all day about it. But,
that's a separate podcast, Nabila.
Yeah, right. A whole completely different podcast. But I always like to ask a question of people. I don't know if you've ever done any rallying in your background, but if you could drive any rally car on any stage in the world, what would it be?
That's tough. I think I'd have to go for a classic Ford Escort Mark II on the Sweet Lamb stage in Wales.
Very nice.
Nice answer. Not a single person has looked back in the historic category, but those escorts can be a lot of fun. And I have to say, Sweet Lamb is one of my favorite stages. So good choice. Good choice.
Well, it's so much fun. I've never been there, but it looks like a lot of fun.
Oh, you got to go. You can even just test there. I'm pretty sure you could practice your rallycross while you're over there.
I want to. I have a bunch of family in England. Still have the passport. So it'd be good. I have an excuse to get over there.
You heard it here first, everyone. I think.
No, I was just gonna say if Rally GB comes back in the next couple of years, we can get you on an escort out on the stages.
Oh, I'd love to do that. What was the rally down in Mexico where they would just like bring people in for an escort? Do you remember that?
Oh,
I
do.
There's some, it was like Rally Legends type thing, but it was like an actual competition in Mexico. And they just brought in like a ton of like random drivers in to just do like the one event, the Mark II Escort.
I think I know what you're talking about, but I don't remember off the top of my head. I'd have to do some research into that.
I think Dirtfish even covered it. Yeah, that's probably why. I didn't catch that. Could you? So that's
sorry, Siri.
Fourth guest to the podcast, Siri. I'm going to just move swiftly on from that before she interrupts us again. The other question that we always like to ask our guests on this is, can you describe Nitro RX in 3 words?
I'm exciting. That was kind of the same thing. Thrilling, fun, and dirty.
Dirty.
Dirty, nice. Very dirty.
Oh, I love that.
We have learned a lot about you. I mean, it's so cool, isn't it, Thiemo, to have someone come on the podcast who's talked about something other than just kind of Nitro. I mean, we've thrown in so many different things today: school, baking, racing.
Yeah, I mean, I thought halfway through the big conversation, like, and for those of you just joining, this is the Nitro RX podcast.
Oh wait, hold on. I'm gonna send you guys some photos of just like some stuff that I've made.
We're gonna have a whole cake post on Instagram, I think.
Right.
Actually,
I think that's gonna have to be it. It's gonna have to be a baking and racing kind of like real intertwined, eh?
Absolutely, yeah. But you remember that cake that I entered a cake in the competition? I finished third in it. It was actually a Union Jack cake.
That's so funny.
You cannot make this stuff up.
Oh wow. They look amazing. We will definitely be sharing these if that's cool with you.
Yeah, 100%. a lot of photos of things I've made.
I'm also thinking we need to get to a Nitro Rally event soon if this is going to be some of the stuff that's going to be there.
I honestly, I like to bring stuff to the events. So in Minnesota, I brought cookies. In Sweden, I didn't have an oven, but I brought like a bunch of stuff to rallies and stuff. So I normally bring something with me.
Awesome. Right, this just makes it even clearer that we've got to get ourselves to a Nitro round. But on that note, I have to say a massive thank you, George, for joining us today on the podcast. It was really awesome having you on, and I hope you had fun here.
I definitely did. Thank you guys so much.
So that then leads us into our next section, which is drivers that impressed us the most over the weekend. Nabila, I think it's almost pointless to ask who you've got at the top of your list.
I'm just going to say Fraser, and I mentioned all the above reasons when we spoke. So basically, solid weekend consistency. Happy to see him performing as well as he is. Because if I go back, I'm literally just going to be repeating myself.
I'll let you go to talk about someone who had less of a good weekend overall, though, who is, we're going to put him in this category just because he deserves a shout out.
Absolutely. It was nice to see Connor in a final. I think it might have been his first final. I don't want to be quoted on that because I could be
Minnesota,
wrong, but
he was in the final there as well.
Okay. So he's come back to the US and at least he's facing in finals. But what a shocking weekend he had. I mean, he had a couple of crashes, and it's a good thing for most sports car is used to rallying, because they certainly were kept busy this weekend trying to look after and keep these cars together on the road for Travis and Connor. But yeah, it was nice to see him kind of doing a little bit better. And then, albeit by the end, he just didn't have a solid weekend. And I really hope his luck changes, because he's a good driver. Like, you see him driving, he's got the pace. He's just having some really bad luck, and I hope it eventually goes away.
I think it's what we call a character building weekend, isn't it?
But he's having too many character building weekends.
Yes, very much so. I don't like having to say that. On some more lighter notes, though, Ollie Bennett is worth a mention here, who, again, a little bit like Fraser, as you were saying earlier, is showing that experience over the season is building and building now, and it's improving in a positive direction. It was his second final, and he put on some really good fighting at times. And it was like I was just saying, it's great to see his improvements there. And I think it was possibly the last chance qualifier. I may be wrong because just so much racing over the weekend, but he just was absolutely stonking and just left everyone else to the dust. And they were all fighting amongst themselves in the background. He was like, all right, bye guys, I'll just go and do this then. So it was nice to see that. It's just really nice to see, because again, it just shows that you can't predict what's going to happen here. And okay, maybe for the next round or two, he's not going to be up there. I will happily be wrong about that. But it just shows that maybe come the end of the season, when you've got the guys at the front of the championship all fighting and really wanting something, he could be the one to spoil the party and potentially make or break which way the championship goes.
Absolutely. And I hope he's building, and I hope he's gaining that confidence, and we can see him on a podium step at some point in the last few rounds. I mean, it's not even a few rounds. There's still at least 5, I think.
Yeah,
minimum.
The calendar is just so spread out. It's hard to keep track.
And I just hope that he does build and realize that, look, you're getting there. You've got that pace. The car, you're learning that car now. So it's just, hopefully he gets a weekend where he can put it all together and it just gels for him. So it'll be really nice to see that.
And a bit like you, I wanted to mention Laticia again in this category, in this section of the podcast, for the exact same reasons I said earlier. It's just great to see her showing the potential and slowly capitalizing on it. It's a shame we couldn't see that realized to its full extent. But again, for someone who is very brand new to this and is normally on 4 wheels of a different kind, and with a lot less kind of baggage around those 4 wheels, it's pretty impressive to see that nonetheless. So it just kind of, maybe there's hope for me in Nitro RX again one day. Who knows?
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think, obviously, you can't go a week without mentioning Jenson Button. He's Jenson Button.
Yeah, it was a shame. It's kind of had a bit of an upsie in practice and with the gap jump, and decided I'm going to sit this one out and get more practice on my belt before Phoenix, hopefully, and then he can come in there and fully send it, as they would say, over the gap jump there instead. But sensible. in some ways. A shame, obviously, we didn't get to see it, but at the same time, considering all the action that we were absolutely treated to this weekend, I can't complain too much. It's obviously you want to see him there, but if this means that we get to see him come back in a really fighting spirit and want to prove himself, then because we don't want to see him lounging around at the back, do we? So we want to see him properly in it. And with how close everything was this weekend, in all three categories, you got to think, yeah, fair enough, take your time out, do what you need to do, and then come back for Phoenix, and maybe he'll live up to the name of Phoenix. Who knows? He'll rise from his ashes.
Absolutely. And I think what's interesting to see is, well, we go back to the episode that we talked with Timmy, and he mentioned how rough it was for him to get used to that gap junk, and he had a ton of experience in rallycross. So not only is Jensen coming in from not really a lot of experience behind the wheel of a rallycross car or on a rallycross track.
Shouldn't be gap jumping F1 cars.
Exactly. So it's going to take him a little bit of time. And I appreciate him understanding that, like, look, I know I need the practice and I know I need the learning. And I think it's best for me to just take a little bit of time and gain that before I start trying to compete, because he's a competitor. He's not going to be wanting to sit at the back. And if he doesn't feel like he's going to be able to perform at his fullest potential, it just makes more sense to him for him to just wait and get used to those gap jumps. And hopefully maybe he'll go back and listen to that podcast with Timmy and get some tips, you know?
Well, who knows? We'll send it. We'll DM to him. Like, just in case. Don't tell anyone, but just in case. Does bring us on to final thoughts for this weekend. Then I want to know if you've got any last little bits that you want to mention.
No, I think it was all pretty solid weekend and an exciting chat with George. And I just wish him luck, and hopefully he has a little bit of a better round the next time. And honestly, my main thing is I hope we start seeing a little bit more from Travis in Group E. But in a way, I am.
You sound like a
really
disappointed mother.
He's not. Yeah, but also I'm glad we're not seeing him just constantly being on the top step and like dominating his own championship. Like there's just so many good drivers that it's exciting. And I really am looking forward to Phoenix and the next few rounds and seeing how this championship pans out, because I can't call it.
No, I wouldn't want to make a bet on that, even at the very nice odds that they do for this. One thing I will just mention before we wrap up completely, though, a bit like you saying we can't go a week without mentioning Jensen Button, can't go a week on the podcast without mentioning Street Bike Tommy. Again, just good quality entertainment in between races. Halloween obviously agrees with him quite a bit, and he got matching butt tattoos with someone. I'm not entirely sure who. I might have been the tattoo artist herself, which I was kind
Amy
of flicking
Hood.
that. Okay.
It was Amy Hood. She's she does electric scooter biking and some other things, and also drives monster trucks in her spare time.
Makes perfect sense now that you say that. And he had, I think, a remote control rat going around the place and just freaking some people out there and having good fun with that, which annoyed Travis a little bit, but I think might have cheered him up a bit between races. And the most entertaining bit for me was going around trying to get free stuff to stick in his Halloween trick or treat bag. And I think he's got a new best friend because one of the vendors went, "Oh, I've got something extra special that you'll love here." Thinking, okay, maybe it's an extra big chocolate bar or something. No, big bottle of rum. Sticks it straight in the goodie bag for him. So yeah, definitely Nitro RX this.
Absolutely. And they brought that kind of fun-filled into it, and it was just awesome. But I think that's all we have time for this week. Thanks for joining us. And Thiemo, in the meantime, where can you be found?
If you want to see a bit more of me, you can see me over on the Kerbs, where I interview people from all across the world of motorsport every week, as well as on the Undercut Podcast, which focus on Formula One, and I also do the odd article here and there for Is It Fast? What about you, Nabila? Where can the people find you?
You can find me over on Instagram on my own page, and of course the Nitro Rallycross page, the podcast page, and TikTok. I mean, hopefully eventually you'll be able to find me on the Nitro Rallycross page. You know, stuff's in motion.
That's what we're aiming for. That's what we're aiming for.
Absolutely. But yeah, no, thank you so much for joining us, and we shall speak to you after the next round in Phoenix in a couple weeks. Maybe we'll have a couple driver interviews in between. You never know.